Okay, we are live. Right, we're learning the laws of Mezuzah, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, chapter 11, and we're up to Sif Zayin, number 7. And before affixing the Mezuzah, we recite a bracha who sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to affix a Mezuzah, the Mezuzah. If you affix several Mezuzahs at one time, one bracha suffices them all. If the mezuzah falls off and you refix it, you should again recite the bracha. However, if you remove the mezuzah in order to examine it, it's questionable if you are required to recite another bracha. So first of all, it's interesting that the text, okay, so he said before you affix the mezuzah, you recite the bracha. Obviously, only on a room which requires a mezuzah with a bracha. There's many types of rooms, whether it's got to do with the size of the room or the purpose of the room, where it doesn't really require a mezuzah, or there's a doubt whether or not it requires a mezuzah, and therefore we often recommend to put up a mezuzah, but without a bracha. Now it's interesting that he says the text of the bracha is likboya mezuzah, which is in the singular, to affix a mezuzah, and even though you are if you're fixing several mezuzahs at one time, one bracha suffices them all. Nevertheless, we say it in the singular. Now, the truth is, recently we've been bumping into the issue of the challenge of translation. The Gebaya mezuzah is indeed in the singular to affix mezuzah, but it's not a mezuzah. He has commanded us concerning affixing mezuzah. So it doesn't, to affix a mezuzah connotes one and not many. The Gebaya mezuzah in the Hebrew, even though it is the singular, but it sort of lends itself to meaning that Hashem commanded us concerning this mitzvah, and so it does make sense to say it in the singular, even concerning many mezuzahs. Just for the sake of comparison, when you make a bracha for toiveling kelim, for immersing dishes in the mikvah, so there's a difference. If you're only toiveling one utensil, you say al tfilas keli, which is one utensil, and if you're toiveling multiple, then you say the bracha in the plural. Okay. Now, one mezuzah one bracha for many mezuzahs, it's still many mitzvahs. Each door is its own mitzvah. So one bracha only works for many mezuzahs if you did not interrupt in the middle. But if you put up mezuzah A and then you spoke, then you interrupted with speech, and before you put up the second mezuzah, then you do have to say a second bracha, unless the speech was related to the mezuzah. You said to somebody, pass me the hammer, pass the scotch tape, which you need to fix up the mezuzah, then you should try to avoid that. But if you did that, that's not an interruption that requires another bracha. But if you actually spoke, then it does require another bracha. Now, then he says if the mezuzah falls off. Not so long ago, we learned chapter 9. In chapter 9, we spoke about when your talis falls off. And we saw that there is a difference between whether you remove your talis and you take it off, let's say, to go to the bathroom and with the intention to put it back on in a short while. So then you don't have to say a bracha. But when your talis falls off unintentionally, then at least in theory, you do have to say another bracha. We discussed that in practice that may not be the case. That may not always be the case. But so the same applies for the mezuzah. If the mezuzah falls off, so that's it. The mezuzah, the mitzvah has been, right now you're not doing the mitzvah. So when you reaffix the mezuzah, you have to make another bracha. However, if you remove the mezuzah in order to examine it with the intention to reaffix the mezuzah in a short while, then it is questionable. And the reason why it's questionable, or the main reason why it's questionable, is because, well, how long are you taking it down? For an hour, for 24 hours, for 7 days? How long are you taking it down to check it? In practice, the custom is that if it's in the same day, if you take down the mezuzah to check it and you put it back on the same day, you do not say a bracha. But if it's the next day, and certainly if it's 24 hours later, then you do say a bracha. Now, here's another thing, that if you change the mezuzah, let's say now I just take off the mezuzah and put it on another one, So I would have to say another bracha. So that could be the custom is that when you check the mezuzahs, you keep a note. You somehow keep a mark of which mezuzah belongs on each door, and you put them back in the same place that they were. And there are a number of reasons for that custom, but I'm just thinking now that it could be that one of the reasons for the custom is that if you put up if I have two doors and I take them down to check and I put them back even on the same day, but I switch them around to the other doors, so then each door is now doing a different mitzvah than it was before and may require a new bracha. Perhaps that's another reason why it's customary to keep track of which mezuzah is which. Okay. Some gates have a smaller doorway near the large opening of the gate, and through this small opening, people usually go out and come in, whereas the main gate is used only occasionally, since there are two separate doorways having between them a post which has the width of a tefach. Two mezuzahs are required. Right, we're not talking here about where you have one door inside the smaller one, where, like, let's say if it's a door for people to go in and out, and then if cars need to get past, then with sort of the wall also opens up. That's not what we're talking about here. Here we're talking about you have two doors next to each other. Usually you use one of them, and on an occasion you use the other one. They both need a mezuzah. One application of one door inside another door, which I don't recall offhand how we do it, is what do you do if you have this quite common again nowadays, especially in shuls and big places where you have a removable divider. So it can be used as a wall, or it could be open. Now, when it's open, that whole area may be a big door frame, and the collapsible wall could be considered the door. So perhaps you need a mezuzah on the big frame of the room. But then when the wall is closed, there's another door within that wall that's its own door. But then it's only a temporary door. So that's an interesting question. Okay, number 9. In a place where you suspect that people might steal the mezuzah, if possible, you should make a groove in the doorpost of the house and place the mezuzah in it. Right? We spoke about this last week in a place where somebody, there was a rule of no religious display. But do not make a groove deeper than a tefach, because there the mezuzah would be on the doorpost of your house, but not in the doorpost, and would be invalid. So it has to be a tefach, a few inches, 3 inches or so. Don't make the hole deeper than that. You should also be careful that in all circumstances, the place of the mezuzah should be distinct. If you cannot possibly cut out the part of the doorpost of the house, in this situation, you may fix mezuzah inside the house behind the door, but only in the doorpost itself and not on the inner wall of the house. And the mezuzah should not be distanced more than a tefach from the doorway opening, because it would be invalid. I'm not sure how that last line fits. Okay, let's go through this. So first of all, you can dig a hole, dig a groove into the doorpost, but no deeper than a tefach. If possible, you should be careful that the mezuzah should be distinct. In other words, that it should be recognizable that there is a mezuzah there. Now, if you can't fit the mezuzah, if you can't dig a hole, a groove, or whatever reason, you can't put a mezuzah there, so then you have to do it. You can do it behind the door. We mentioned this last week also. You can do it behind the door, but only if it's within the door frame. Yeah, in this situation, maybe it's mezuzah inside the house behind the door, but only on the doorpost itself and not on an inner wall of the house. We discussed that last week. Now, this last line, I'm not sure what that means. The mezuzah should not be distanced more than a tefach from the doorway opening, because then it would be invalid. I mean, that's obvious, but what's that got to do with what he just said? it seems to be saying that even if it's within the door frame, if it's more than a tefach away from the beginning of the entrance, if it's behind the door, it would not be valid. Okay, interesting. Usually, we already said last time that ideally you need to put the mezuzah in the front, right? In order, we spoke about the two reasons, whether it's because the mezuzah itself provides protection and you want more area of the house to be protected, or so that you should bump into the mezuzah, you should encounter the mezuzah earlier. Right? But it didn't say that if it's not at the very front of the door, it's not kosher. At the very front of the doorway, it's not kosher. Here he's saying even stronger that it's not kosher if you put it further behind in the doorway, if it's behind the actual door.
How much is a tefach?
I can't tell you. A tefach is, I know in centimeters it's 10 centimeters. It's approximately 3 inches. I don't remember the exact number in inches. Okay, a house is not required to have mezuzah unless it has dimensions of 4 amos by 4 amos. An amma is 1.5 feet, 18 inches. So 4 amos by 4 amos means 6 feet by 6 feet. If there are no dimensions of 4 amos by 4 amos, but there is the equivalent area of the square of 4 amos, for example, right? So it's 36 square feet. For example, if the length was greater than the width, or if the area was round, some maintain that it requires a mezuzah, and others maintain that it does not. So here, right, you have a round area, and you're using your pi to determine what the area of a round room is. And but if you have 36 square feet, but it's not, you don't have 6 feet on each side, so you could be sometimes you have a storage room which is very long and narrow. It could be 5 feet wide and 30 feet long. So some say it does need a mezuzah. Some say it does not need a mezuzah. Now, what's going on? Why is this flashing? The computer's having a nervous breakdown over here. Can you see it on that screen? That screen looks fine. But this screen is. Okay. Now, what do we do in practice? Now, the truth is that we don't have Hilchos Mezuzah from the Alter Rebbe. Like I mentioned, there's many parts of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that they never reached us, whether they were destroyed or maybe he never wrote those parts. But there is one comment on Hilchos Mezuzah that I'm aware of from the Alter Rebbe, which comes up in the laws of Eruvin, because in the laws of Eruvin, the size of a house comes up, and there the Alter Rebbe sort of mentions, parenthetically, that the same thing that he says by Eruvin applies to Mezuzah. And over there, the Alter Rebbe says that if a room or house doesn't have 4 by 4, even if it does have the area of 36 square feet of what is it in amos? 4 times 4 is 16, so 16 square amos, 36 square feet. It's exempt. It doesn't need to have a mezuzah. Nevertheless, it's a machlokes, there's different opinions, and in practice, the custom is that we do put a mezuzah in such a room, even, but of course without a bracha. Now, there's a very interesting chumrah that some people have. What do you do if you have a room that's not even the square feet, nothing? It's just whatever. It's 5 amos by 5 amos. Sorry, 5 feet by 5 feet, right? So the simple understanding is that it's exempt from a mezuzah. Nevertheless, there are those who have a chumrah to put a mezuzah there backwards, which is based on the Rabbi Kiva Ega, who says that if let's say it's common, let's say by a big walk-in closet. Let's say you have a walk-in closet that's or a laundry room that's small. Now, when it comes to how you measure the space, so let's say you have a laundry room, which is a big room, 10 amos by 10 amos, but you have in there your boiler and your air conditioner and your filter and a washing machine and a dryer and the sink, and the area that's left is only 5 amos by 5 amos, right? So as you can imagine, there's different opinions, but in practice, what's common practice is that the things which are absolutely fixed there, which is not usable space, like a boiler, that is considered to diminish the area of the room. But things which are usable area, like a sink and even a washing machine and dryer, which it's small enough that you could use the space on top as counter space. You might keep your bottle of detergent there or stuff like that. So then that does count to your area of the room. It could be common in a kitchen as well. Often a kitchen is not really a very big room, and you need to count the counter space. You need to reckon the counter space in order for it to be the screen's going completely off. You need to reckon the counter space in order for it to have the requisite space. Now, but if it doesn't have the requisite space, so let's say you have such a laundry room, I can't see anything on my screen, so maybe I can control it by So there is a chumrah where Rabbi Kiva Eiger says that, let's say this room is less than the requisite space, but so then you would look at it as if you left your house. Now you're outside in the street. You come back from your little laundry room into your house. You need to have a mezuzah. So therefore, some have a chumrah in such a scenario to put the mezuzah on the right, as if you were on the right coming from that little laundry room into the rest of the house. So that's a chumrah that some people do. There's also another chumrah of the Chamudi Daniel, but amongst Chassidim, from what I've observed, is that many Chassidim do the chumrah in accordance with Rabbi Kiva Eiger. Okay. A doorway does not require mezuzah unless it has 2 doorposts, which have the minimal height of 10 tefachim and a lintel above them. Even if the doorposts were not of wood or stones, but rather the walls of the structure itself serve as a doorpost, and there's a ceiling on top of them, a mezuzah is also required. If a mezuzah has only 1 doorpost, for instance, where on one side a wall extends as a perpendicular from a side wall as illustrated in this diagram. Let's see if we have the diagram. If the extension is on the left side, a mezuzah is not required. If the extension on the right side, there is a question if the mezuzah is required. Therefore, the mezuzah should be put up without the bracha, or put up after affixing another mezuzah on the doorway, which definitely requires a mezuzah, and the bracha will exempt the doubtful doorway. Similarly, in any case where the requirement for mezuzah is doubtful, this practice should be followed. Okay, let's just start from the end. Very simple thing, that if you have a doorpost which does not need a bracha, or it's questionable whether it needs a bracha, then you're best off by, if you have an opportunity, to put it to put a mezuzah on a doorpost that does require with the bracha, and then that one covers both. Okay, let's just review this Sif and see what he's saying here. The doorposts have to have a minimal height of 10 tefachim, and there has to be a lintel above them. That doesn't mean that the 10 tefachim, the doorposts, have to reach the lintel. You might have a doorpost up to here, and then open space, and then on top there could be a lintel. Now he says that the doorpost doesn't have to be an actual post. So you have the wall ends, and then there's a piece of wood or something that's a brick or whatever that's affixed to the end of the wall as its own doorpost. The end of the wall in and of itself serves as a doorpost. And so if you have a wall, this is common also sometimes by kitchen areas or whatever, you might have a wall that protrudes, but the wall is only this high off the ground. but that's a doorpost. And then it's sort of open all the way to the ceiling, and there could be a matching sort of parallel, area directly on top of that doorpost, a drop in the ceiling, which constitutes a lintel. So in such a case, that requires a mezuzah, and the mezuzah would be very low down. You go to houses, you could sometimes see it makes a good conversation starter. Mezuzah way down, almost knee height, because that's 2/3 of the area. Remember, we put the mezuzah at the bottom of the top third, so that's where the mezuzah has to be. Now, then he talks about where you only have one doorpost. So let me see if I can show you on the thing here some pictures of this. What that means. Here you go. So here you have a picture. You can see where on one side the wall is just a straight wall, and on the other side there is a door, sort of the beginning of a new wall, of a doorpost. So it depends. If the post is on the right side and the wall is on the left side, so you have only one doorpost and a lintel, but it's a right doorpost, so then you put up a mezuzah. If it's a left doorpost, then you do not put up a mezuzah. I have a feeling, Bob, that I have a vague recollection that in your house, in the hallway leading toward the kitchen, you have such a thing, that on the right side there's a protrusion, which sort of considers it like a doorpost, but on the left side there's no protrusion, and we did put up a mezuzah there. Is that correct? I think we did. Yeah. Okay, now here there's also another picture where you see what you mean, where you have doorposts which are low down, and then there's a sort of open area, and then the lintel is much higher up. And I don't know if it's clear enough to see on this image that the mezuzah is right over there. Okay. By the way, I should point out also that this thing, that if you have a right doorpost and on the other side there's a wall, you put up mezuzah, is only if on the other side is a stationary wall. If it's a door, I've seen that before, where you have sort of opposite the front door, it can sometimes work out that you're walking through, and on the right side you have a doorpost, and on the left side you have a door. So then then you don't put a mezuzah there. Okay. Okay, I think we can move on to number 12. If the doorway has two doorposts without a mashkif, without a lintel, but there is above them an arch top, like a bow, or even if there are no doorposts at all, but rather the arch itself extends upward from the ground in a curve, if the entrance has a height of 10 tfachim and a width of 4 tfachim, it requires a mezuzah. In the case of stores, okay, 1 second. So I'll show you again pictures of that. Here you have a picture of an arch it's an arch all the way from the floor. So he's saying that if you could sort of cut out an area that's 10 tfachim high and 4 tfachim wide, so about, about 3 feet tall, approximately, and 4 tfachim wide, is not very wide at all, then it requires a mezuzah. This is somewhat of an atypical arch, but what is a very common arch is one which has a regular sort of doorway, but instead of being flat on the top, it's rounded on the top, and obviously the similar idea applies. In the case of stores where one doorpost is made to reach from the ground until the lintel, and the other doorpost does not reach until the lintel, but rather the wall above that post is cut out approximately at an amma or more, as illustrated in the diagram, which is non-existent. If the doorpost which extends to the lintel is the right of the entrance, then the mezuzah is placed on the doorpost. If the smaller doorpost is on the right of the entry, and if it is 10 tefachim, the mezuzah is placed on it. And if it is not 10 tefachim high, it is affixed to the wider part of the wall. Okay, there's no diagram here. Let's see. I don't see a diagram, but basically similar idea as we spoke about when the doorpost doesn't reach all the way up. So if there's something atypical about the right doorpost, if it's less than 10 tefachim, he's saying if it's less than 10 tefachim, then the rest of the wall is considered the doorpost. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what this looks like, so we'll have to move on. Okay, now there are some halachic authorities who maintain that even if there are no doors on the entrance, it still requires a mezuzah, and there are others who maintain that there must be a door, and therefore you should not. That's the Rosh is the first one, and the Rambam is the one who says there has to be a door. Therefore, you should not affix mezuzah until you first hang the door. You should not first affix the mezuzah and then hang the door because it must comply with the scripture tasav elimina osu. So we've discussed this before. There's a concept of tasav elimina osu. We spoke about it at length by tzitzis. You can't, in the simple case of mezuzah, what it would mean is you can't take a piece of wood, fix a mezuzah to it, and then attach that piece of wood to your wall to make it into a doorpost. First, you have a doorpost, and then you have a mezuzah affixed to it. Now, a doorway, which doesn't actually have a door, an entranceway that doesn't actually have a door, according to the Rambam, does not require a mezuzah. Now, obviously, we do put a mezuzah there because we want to do it according to the Rosh as well, but we don't say bracha. Fair enough. What he's warning us over here is that you must put up the door before you put up the mezuzah, because if you put up the mezuzah before the door, then according to the Rambam, who holds there's no requirement of a mezuzah over there, you have violated tasa v'lo min ha'osi. This actually comes up. Sometimes people will do construction or painting. You know, you're repainting your house. So you remove all the mezuzahs, you don't want to get them ruined, and the painter might remove the door to, you know, if he's doing a good job to paint it properly. And then, you know, you don't want to go to sleep without mezuzahs, so you put all the mezuzahs back, and then the next day the painter finishes his job and reattaches the door. That's no good. You have to first attach the door and then put up the mezuzah. House that is not designated for permanent dwelling does not require a mezuzah. Therefore, the sukkah and sukkahs requires no mezuzah. Similarly, those stores that are constructed on the market, they solely for the duration of the market and are afterwards dismantled, or if they remain without being used, these likewise require no mezuzah. However, stores that are permanently open for business require a mezuzah. Now, even though he says that stores require a mezuzah, in practice, we do not put up the mezuzah on stores with a bracha. Any office space or place which is not used for literal dwelling, where you don't sleep there for the nighttime, we put up a mezuzah without a bracha. Yeah. So even in this building, for example, unless you have if you eat a meal, if you have a room in your office where where you go every day to eat or something, maybe then you would have to ask. Now, there's a very interesting hechatimta that comes up from just putting numbers 13 and 14 together. It's somewhat common, certainly here in Chicago, that people have a deck year-round, a deck with a pergola, and then comes sukkahs, they put in panels to create walls, and that's the sukkah. Now, one of the panels has a door in it. Right. So I actually just this year helped somebody put up his sukkah, and he has on his pergola year-round, there's a mezuzah on the frame of the pergola because there's sort of these doorposts, there's the steps going down front to the backyard or going up from the backyard into the deck, however you look at it, and he has a mezuzah going into his deck year-round. Now then comes sukkahs, and he's affixing a door. So usually if you were to be fixing a door onto an entranceway that doesn't yet have a door, you would have to remove the mezuzah, then put up the door, and then put the mezuzah back. That's what we said in number 13. But for sukkahs, you don't need to do that, because the door that you're putting there for sukkahs is of temporary use. It's a temporary dwelling, and therefore that door of the panel that has the door in it for the sukkah doesn't affect the mezuzah on the deck.